In the heart of the Dinaric Alps, a couple of hikers disappear without a trace on an expedition to uncover a secret trail that promises to reveal mysteries of ancient forgotten peoples. Known for its stunning and dangerous landscapes, the region now holds a dark secret. What happened there? The mystery grows as time passes, and answers seem increasingly distant. If you're as intrigued as we are, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow this story as it unfolds. When the couple disappeared in the Dinaric Alps, the immediate grief that gripped their families was indescribable. For parents, losing a child is a pain that seems to shatter the world. The emptiness that sets in is profound, as if the ground had disappeared beneath their feet. Uncertainty gripped every minute lived after that devastating news. Every word of support they received, every attempt at consolation, seemed in vain given the overwhelming lack of answers surrounding the case. The parents, especially, watched the nights drag on in agonizing wait. The fear of loss, mixed with the frustration of the lack of clues, slowly consumed them. For the siblings, the suffering also became unbearable. The lack of an explanation, of any sign that they might be found, made the grief even more difficult to bear. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Hope, which had initially remained firm, was beginning to crumble. The pain of uncertainty is something that consumes from the inside out. What began as a harrowing mystery slowly became a shadow difficult to dispel. Relatives began to wonder, what if the couple had gotten lost? What if, while trying to explore those uncharted mountains, they had been victims of a fatal accident? These questions, while understandable, brought no peace. They only amplified the anguish of not knowing what had truly happened. How could they give up if there was still a chance of finding them alive? But as time passed, the pain multiplied with the lack of answers. It was impossible not to feel helpless as the months passed without any news. Trying to cling to something that would keep them hopeful, theories began to emerge. Some were more realistic, others more fanciful, but all fueled by the desperation to understand what could have happened. Some suggested that the couple might have been swept away by an unexpected accident, perhaps something like an avalanche or a fatal fall, while trying to cross a particularly treacherous area. Other, darker theories surfaced from time to time, including the fear that something far more sinister had occurred: robbery, kidnapping, or even a detour off the trail that would lead them to an unknown destination. The local community, already accustomed to the mysteries of those mountains, seemed to lose patience with the case. Some began to believe that the relentless nature of the Dinaric Alps had overpowered the couple, consuming them without a trace. The authorities, for their part, tried to remain calm, affirming that they would continue the search. But with each passing day, hope became a distant echo. The family members, however, could not let go of the idea that their loved ones were gone. Every small clue, however vague, was analyzed with renewed hope. Every new rumor about the whereabouts of the missing was vigorously investigated. They knew that, however painful it might be, they needed to know the truth, even if it was the hardest of all. But the truth was proving more elusive with each step, and with it, the emotional suffering continued to consume everything around them. Amidst all this anguish, one force remained: the unconditional love the families felt for the missing. Even with the pain and uncertainty, there was something in their hearts that kept them from giving up. The hiking couple, however absent they were, still left an indelible mark on the lives of all who loved them. It was a love that fought against the shadows, against doubts, and against the idea that a future without them might be possible. 12 years had passed since the couple's disappearance in the Dinaric Alps, and the pain of uncertainty still lingered, like a shadow that gave no room for light. Family members and authorities were on the verge of emotional exhaustion, while the search for answers dragged on without concrete results. The case, which had begun as an intriguing mystery, with theories and hypotheses that didn't hold water, seemed to be approaching a dead end. What remained was a profound emptiness, fueled by a long absence of any clues that could make sense of the enigma. The missing couple seemed to have been swallowed by the mountains, as if they had never existed. However, the unexpected turn of events that investigators and family members had been waiting for came surprisingly quickly, coming from a place no one could have imagined: a simple drone expedition. In 2025, 12 years after the disappearance, a specialized team was sent to fly over the Dinaric Alps again, intending to document the current conditions of the terrain. Increasingly advanced technology had allowed the use of drones for more detailed observation of the area without exposing humans to unnecessary danger. And it was in one of these aerial images that something unusual appeared. At first, the mission seemed routine. The images of the snow-covered terrain and vast forests surrounding the Dinaric Alps were as familiar as any taken over the years of searching. However, one of the captured images caught the attention of one of the monitoring specialists. What seemed like a simple detail soon became the key to unlocking the mystery that had remained hidden for so long. In that photo, right in the center of a difficult-to-access region, the marks of climbing equipment were visible. It was a backpack, surrounded by objects that appeared to be for the exclusive use of experienced mountaineers. This was no coincidence. No one had found any sign of equipment in that area before. The discovery was nothing less than a sign that the couple had, at least for a time, been there. And most intriguing of all was the fact that the equipment marks were near a structure that, based on the image analysis, appeared to have been constructed. Could the couple have set up a makeshift camp? Or even more so, had they found something important? Something that could explain their absence for so long? This new clue rekindled a hope that had been set aside. The initial impact on authorities and family members was profound. For more than a decade, the lack of any concrete clues about the couple's fate had been frustrating. But now, faced with this new evidence, questions began to arise, one after another. If the couple had left these items behind, could it be possible they were still alive even after so much time? Or did the objects belong to someone who had found them and somehow concealed their true fate? The drone image, which seemed so simple at first glance, was the starting point for a series of investigations re-examining the disappearance site. It was as if the couple had left an invisible trail, now visible, that needed to be followed. The backpack and climbing gear, as well as the mysterious structure, became central elements of the search. What did they represent? Why were they there? How could they have been overlooked for so many years? How was it possible that previous search teams, including experts and local guides, had missed such obvious marks? The search for answers intensified. A new group of experts, including climbers, geologists, and drone technicians, was brought in to investigate the new evidence. They were looking not only for remains of equipment, but also for signs of life. Aerial drone footage provided crucial insight into the area, and more satellite imagery began to be analyzed to precisely map the area where the backpack and structure had been discovered. This new approach, combining advanced technologies with expert knowledge, seemed to finally give concrete direction to what had previously been mere speculation. But doubts didn't disappear with the discovery. In fact, new questions arose, more challenging and complex than ever. The area where the backpack was found was extremely difficult to access, treacherous terrain where the risk of an accident was high. So, if the couple had indeed set up camp there, what would have prevented them from returning? Had they been victims of some kind of accident or fatality, such as a fall? Or were they actually on the verge of a major discovery before disappearing? The idea of a mysterious find began to take shape. What had the couple found in those mountains that could have changed the history of the region? And more importantly, what had caused them to disappear so abruptly, without leaving a single trace? The fact that the backpack and equipment were so close to a mysterious structure raised other possibilities. Could the structure have been the refuge of someone who, like the couple, was trying to explore uncharted territory? Or had the couple, by chance, stumbled upon something the others hadn't yet discovered? Perhaps something valuable or dangerous, leading to their sudden and inexplicable death or disappearance? Theories began to multiply, and each one seemed to make more sense than the last, creating a tangle of possibilities, where each revealed clue seemed to open new doors, but at the same time made it even more difficult to distinguish truth from fiction. The revelation of the backpack and equipment not only renewed hope in the hearts of family members, but also rekindled the interest of the media and the general public. The mystery, which seemed to have been buried over time, resurfaced with unexpected force. But with it came a new challenge: how to deal with the countless speculations that now emerged, often without concrete foundation. How could the truth be found amidst so many assumptions? What really happened in the Dinaric Alps? This initial clue, which might have seemed insignificant at first glance, proved to be a turning point in the story of the couple's disappearance. Now the only question remaining was, would the mountains, with their long-guarded secrets, finally yield their hidden truth? With the discovery of the backpack and climbing gear in the Dinaric Alps, the investigation took a new direction. Instead of continuing the search in the traditional manner, the focus was now on reviewing every piece of information that could shed light on the couple's fate. Experts in various fields were called in, including experienced climbers, geologists, drone technicians, and satellite imagery specialists. The first step in the investigation was to re-examine the original expedition, retracing the couple's route, analyzing the terrain conditions, and seeking to understand why the area where the gear was found had initially been ruled out. Technology, especially satellite imagery and drones, became the investigators' main ally. The Dinaric Alps, previously considered too treacherous for detailed analysis, was now precisely monitored. Using new aerial imaging technology, new points of interest were identified in the area where the backpack was found. What had previously seemed like wild, unexplored terrain now revealed layers of detail that could be unraveled. Every inch of the area was now accurately mapped, and the possibility of a new discovery seemed imminent. Initial observations of aerial imagery revealed that the terrain was not only difficult, but also had features that made it far more complex than previously thought. The location where the couple had last been seen was riddled with rock formations and deep valleys, which could have hidden vital clues. Satellite imagery showed areas of the terrain that had been altered over the years, with signs of recent movement, which seemed to indicate that the region, far from being uninhabited, had been used in some way by someone or something. This raised the hypothesis that the couple might have found some sort of refuge or place of interest that others had overlooked, perhaps something hidden in the rocks or snow that covered the ground. At the same time, new questions arose that needed to be answered. The backpack and equipment found indicated that the couple hadn't gotten lost by accident, but were there for a purpose. After all, what had drawn them to that isolated location? The area was known for its extreme conditions, but it also held its own mystique. Ancient legends spoke of traces of lost civilizations and sites of great archaeological importance. The possibility that the couple were searching for something more than a simple mountain hike became an increasingly plausible theory. Had they encountered something in their explorations, something they weren't prepared to handle? Could the mountains, with all their secrets, hold the key to their disappearance? With a new focus on the area, investigators began searching for any clues that might indicate a significant discovery by the couple. The strange behavior, the backpack left behind, and the makeshift structure seen in aerial footage suggested there was more to the case than simply an ordinary expedition. The team now believed the couple had at some point stumbled upon something that led them to explore the terrain further. But what exactly was that something? What did they find there that led them to change course and eventually disappear in addition to the images and data provided by drones and satellites, a new line of investigation was initiated. Interviews with members of previous expeditions who had visited the area in the years following the disappearance. These explorers, for the most part, were familiar with the region's hardships and had knowledge of details that might go unnoticed by novices. When they began to be questioned about the case, alarming reports emerged of tracks that indicated signs of survival, food trails, makeshift campsites, and other traces that suggested someone might have remained there for a considerable time. However, contrary to what many imagined, these clues weren't directly related to the missing couple. On the contrary, they seemed to suggest that other people were in the area after their disappearance, living for a period in the same extreme conditions. But who were these people? And why were there no official records of other expeditions that might have helped solve the mystery? Was it possible that, after the couple's disappearance, other adventurers had also gone missing? Or was there something else, such as a strange or unknown presence, that remained beyond the scope of the initial investigation? As more people began to be interviewed, new information emerged that reinforced the idea that the missing couple's story was more complex than previously thought. Some testimonies, even contradictory ones, mentioned the presence of a mysterious refuge in the region. These conversations became a central focus of the investigation. What was this refuge? And why did it appear to be an area few previous expeditions had ventured into? The answers became increasingly elusive. While the clues didn't connect directly, they seemed to indicate that the couple wasn't just looking for adventure. They were after something much larger and more meaningful. As the investigation took new directions, a clearer pattern began to emerge. Each new clue and testimony brought a piece of the truth to light. The pieces began to fit together, but the bigger picture remained fragmented. Were the couple victims of an accident? Or was something darker at play? The questions were so numerous that, as each seemed to be answered, more complex ones emerged. Tension mounted, and the sense that something big was about to be revealed became increasingly palpable. But one thing was clear. The truth about what happened in the Dinaric Alps was closer than ever. What was now happening in the Dinaric Alps was more than just an investigation. It was a search for an answer that, for 12 long years, had seemed out of reach. And as new discoveries piled up, the truth finally began to emerge from the mountain's shadows. But what might that truth be? Researchers, once skeptical, now believed the answer was closer than they had imagined. The mysterious structure found in the area, the equipment marks, and the accounts of past expeditions formed an intriguing, yet still incomplete, picture. Whoever could put the pieces together correctly might finally discover what happened to the couple and what the Dinaric Alps were hiding. As the investigation into the couple's disappearance in the Dinaric Alps progressed, The roles of key figures became increasingly crucial. These figures were not only investigators, but also people who had experienced the region in previous years, and who could somehow provide vital information for the case. The testimonies of explorers who had visited the area after the disappearance became the primary source of new clues. What began as a series of simple interviews soon became a delicate and often frustrating process, as the information became more nebulous and difficult to verify. These explorers were mostly experienced, with years of experience in the mountains and a deep understanding of the extreme conditions of that isolated region. But as the interviews progressed, something began to bother the investigators. Most of the explorers reported strange markings on the ground, food trails, and makeshift campsites. While these pieces of evidence seemed important, they weren't the kind of clues that could solve such a complex case. And most disturbingly, the explorers' testimonies began to contradict each other. Some reported seeing signs of recent activity, while others claimed the site was completely abandoned. The inconsistencies between their accounts raised more questions than answers. Among the most intriguing statements were those that spoke of an unknown presence in the mountains. Some explorers claimed to have felt a sense of being watched, as if something, or someone, was there but kept a safe distance. Others reported finding marks that indicated someone, probably not the missing couple, had recently passed through. These clues seemed to suggest that the region was not as uninhabited as investigators had thought. But who was this mysterious presence? Could these people or beings be involved in the disappearance? The questions began to mount, and with them came new suspicions. One of the most disturbing theories that emerged during these interviews was the possibility that the couple hadn't been the only ones to get lost in the region. Some explorers suggested that there were others, perhaps adventurers, who were there in search of something similar, an ancient secret, lost in the mountains, that had drawn people here over the years. These new clues began to connect with the region's ancient legends, which spoke of forgotten ruins and civilizations that had vanished without a trace. Was it possible that the couple had been drawn by these stories and, upon finding something of value, had become entangled in a kind of danger that led to their disappearance? Or even darker, could these tales of ancient peoples be true, and the couple, by venturing so deeply, had stumbled upon something far beyond their comprehension? But the problem with the interviews wasn't just the content of the stories. It began to become clear that some of the explorers were, for some reason, reluctant to share everything they knew. There was a growing sense that some information was being withheld. Investigators tried to delve deeper into certain issues, but many of the explorers began to become defensive when it came to what they had actually found on later expeditions. Some seemed hesitant to talk about crucial details, while others gave vague answers, as if avoiding something. Was it possible that some of these explorers were involved in some way? Perhaps without even realizing it, or out of fear of what they might have seen in the mountains. As the number of interviews increased, distrust began to grow within the research team. The lack of clarity in the stories, combined with the reluctance of some witnesses to speak, led investigators to question whether their versions of events were being distorted in some way. Those clues that had seemed so promising at first now became pieces of a difficult puzzle to piece together. Not only because the information was scarce, but because the clues were often conflicting. What should have been a vital aid to solving the case now seemed only to deepen the mystery. Furthermore, the previous searches, conducted by local authorities and some specialized teams, began to be questioned. Why had some areas of the mountain, apparently containing interesting remains, been neglected for so long? How could they have overlooked obvious campsites or signs of human activity in critical locations? Those aerial images and the equipment tracks found seemed to have been invisible to the search teams, or perhaps intentionally ignored. It wasn't simply a case of misjudgment, but rather a growing suspicion that something was being covered up. This raised a new question. To what extent were the authorities willing to investigate the case thoroughly? What could have happened in the initial investigations that led to the neglect of such important details? Meanwhile, the pressure on investigators mounted. The search for answers was front and center, not only for family members but also for the local community and the media. The case had become a public obsession, with everyone eagerly awaiting an explanation. And as clues emerged and merged, investigators found themselves in a growing dilemma. How to distinguish what was relevant from what was pure fantasy? How to separate truth from fiction when even those involved in the expeditions seemed to have a vested interest in keeping certain information hidden? What was being hidden? And most importantly, who was behind it? Amidst all these difficulties, one certainty remained in the researchers' minds. The truth was there, in plain sight, but it needed to be carefully unearthed. The key to solving the mystery of the couple's disappearance lay not just in new clues or technological breakthroughs, but in the ability to trust the right information and, above all, to separate the motivations of everyone involved. The mystery seemed deeper than ever, and the research was about to take a darker and more complex turn. As the investigation into the couple's disappearance in the Dinaric Alps progressed, the first fragments of a more complex truth began to emerge, and with them, a series of revelations that shook the foundations of the search. What appeared to be a simple case of misadventure in a remote region became increasingly clear that it involved something much deeper. With each new discovery, the couple's story became intertwined with ancient mysteries, veiled secrets, and unexpected confrontations. What was at stake was not just the resolution of a disappearance, but something that had been buried in the mountains long ago. The biggest revelation came with a more detailed analysis of the mysterious structure found in the aerial drone footage. Initially, there was speculation that it was simply a makeshift shelter built by the couple during their explorations. However, upon closer inspection, the structure revealed something even more intriguing. It didn't appear to be a random construction. It was, in fact, a landmark of historical interest. There were signs that the site held some significant archaeological value, as if it were a forgotten part of an ancient settlement or a lost civilization. This kind of discovery was something that could change the history of the region, and even the world, depending on what was found. The revelation of this structure brought to light a new theory. The couple wasn't just exploring the mountains for pleasure or curiosity. They had unwittingly become involved in something much bigger than they could have imagined. Those mountains, known for their wild beauty, now became a battleground for the truth. The idea that the couple might have found artifacts or information of historical value began to make sense. Were the two explorers victims of a hidden force intent on silencing them? Were the mountains guarding not only their secrets, but also a history that many people would prefer to keep buried? Investigators began to wonder if other expeditions or groups of explorers had ventured into the same area. Stories of ancient ruins and forgotten civilizations began to gain more weight as more clues emerged. But there was a problem. Many of these explorers and experts seemed to be withholding crucial information. During interviews with members of previous expeditions, something seemed to be being hidden, something that could directly link the couple's disappearance to the discovery of something much larger. The reluctance to share specific details of the expeditions generated distrust, causing investigators to begin to view these testimonies with greater skepticism. Who was truly being honest about what they found in the mountains? Questions began to cascade. Was there something more in the mountains, something the other explorers weren't willing to admit? Had the couple discovered something that had sparked the interest of powerful groups intent on keeping the secret hidden? The stories of strange presences, equipment marks, and food trails in remote locations became more than mere coincidences. They were proof that something was being hidden, something of great value that the authorities weren't ready to deal with. This mysterious presence, which seemed to be lurking, could be a form of intimidation or a deliberate attempt to protect something hidden deep within the mountain. As the investigation progressed, confrontations began to intensify. Local authorities, who had initially handled the case conventionally, found themselves forced to reconsider their approaches. Why hadn't the more remote areas of the mountain, where clear signs of human activity were now known, been explored more thoroughly in the initial searches? How could such important details have been overlooked? Pressure on investigators mounted, not only because of the evidence being uncovered, but also because of questions about the failures of local authorities and previous expeditions. The clashes weren't just between investigators and witnesses, but also within the investigation team itself. As more and more evidence emerged, team members found themselves divided on the best way to proceed. Some believed the focus should be on finding the couple's remains and uncovering their story. Others were convinced the true key to the mystery lay in what the couple had found before they disappeared. Their story seemed intertwined with the history of the region in a way no one had imagined until that point. And as tensions rose, the investigation began to move in conflicting directions, with some team members wanting to delve deeper into the archaeological discoveries, while others preferred a more cautious approach, fearing that the search for something bigger could end up becoming an even heavier burden. The final showdown wasn't just between the investigators and the witnesses, but between those who were willing to uncover the truth, no matter the cost, and those who, for some reason, wanted to keep it buried. The signs were becoming increasingly clear. The couple had discovered something significant. Perhaps it was something dangerous, something worth hiding. What was hidden in the mountains could hold the key to a mystery much greater than the simple disappearance of two individuals. And as the confrontations between investigators and authorities intensified, everyone knew the answers were closer than ever. But what would happen when what the couple had found was finally revealed? And who would be willing to protect that secret at any cost? What had seemed like an investigation into the fate of a lost couple was now becoming a battle for control of the truth. With each new development, more questions arose, and the mystery, instead of being solved, became even denser and more fraught with implications. The confrontation was only just beginning, and the long-sought truth seemed to slip further away as more was uncovered. The final expedition, marked by years of anticipation and tension, was about to be the turning point in the case of the couple's disappearance in the Dinaric Alps. After so much time lost in theories and speculation, the team of investigators was finally on the brink of the truth. The terrain, unforgiving and treacherous, offered no guarantee of safety. Snowstorms intensified, making each step more difficult, but the determination to solve the mystery made the researchers immune to fatigue and fear. The goal was clear: find answers no matter the cost. As the team climbed the steep slopes, the feeling that they were approaching something vast grew with each passing second. The region, so isolated and desolate, seemed to hold a revelation, as if the mountains were whispering their secrets in the biting wind. Every patch of snow shifted by the storm seemed to conceal a clue, and the mysterious structure, finally, in sight, was within reach. It was as if time and space were compressing, making the truth closer than ever, but also more dangerous than anyone could have anticipated. As they reached the expedition's critical point, conditions worsened dramatically. Visibility was near zero, and snow covered everything around them. But as they followed the precise coordinates, something incredible happened. Beneath the thick layer of snow and rocks, they found a hidden entrance, a sort of cave or refuge that seemed to have been carefully concealed by nature. The structure, which initially appeared to be a makeshift construction, now revealed itself as a strategic point, possibly used by someone or something wanting to keep its secret safe. The walls of the entrance were covered in signs of wear, and the floor, marked by ancient footprints, showed that someone had somehow been there recently. Excitement gripped the researchers as they took their first look inside the structure. Artifacts covered in dust and layers of ice were visible, but most intriguing was what appeared to be a set of documents, possibly ancient, buried beneath stones that seemed out of place. The images the drones had captured now made perfect sense. They had found what the couple were looking for, and what was hidden there was nothing anyone could have imagined. The reality of what was at stake became clearer as the pieces fell into place. The couple, in their search, had uncovered something much greater, and that something could change the course of history. However, as the investigators neared their final discovery, a strange feeling took hold. Something was wrong. The extreme conditions of the mountains and the structure itself were not only hiding ancient artifacts, but also signs of a mysterious presence, something that became more palpable as the truth approached. It was as if time had stopped there, and each step they took was leading them to something beyond their control. Nature, which had seemed silent and harmless, now seemed to be harboring a greater secret, and that secret was too dangerous to reveal without consequences. The discovery of the artifacts and documents was only the beginning. The true impact of the expedition was that, as investigators explored the structure further, they began to uncover clues to a hidden history that involved the couple more deeply than they had imagined. It was as if they had been drawn there not by chance, but for some greater reason, something they themselves had not fully understood until that moment. The structure, with its ancient walls and mysterious inscriptions, seemed to tell a story of past civilizations, and the couple's connection to these artifacts suggested they had uncovered a secret kept for centuries. As the weather worsened, the discovery became more untenable. The pressure to reveal the truth was taking its toll on all members of the expedition. Fear began to take hold, not because the mountains were dangerous, but because the truth, now so close, seemed to hold a power they could not fathom. The information being extracted from the structure and the puzzle pieces connecting together brought more uncertainty than certainty. What they had found was not just an archaeological discovery. It was something tied to forces beyond human comprehension, something that could have far more profound implications than anyone had anticipated. At that moment, just as the investigators were about to access the final information, the structure seemed to close in on them, as if the mountain itself wanted to protect what was hidden. Revealing the truth would not be a simple matter. It carried with it a life-threatening risk, an unknown force that was now beginning to manifest itself. What the couple had found in that remote region would not only change the history of the mountains, but also of everyone involved in the investigation. The truth was there, right in front of them, but the price to pay to reveal it was higher than anyone could have imagined. The climax of the investigation went far beyond simply discovering the couple's fate. The truth revealed was shrouded in complexity and danger that defied comprehension. The mystery of the mountains was not simply a disappearance. It was something much broader and darker, and what was about to be revealed would change the lives of everyone involved. The line between uncovering the truth and confronting forces beyond human control was growing ever thinner. The truth, after years of silence and mystery, finally revealed itself before the investigators' eyes. The structure they discovered concealed clear evidence that the couple had, in fact, reached a decisive point in their expedition. Among the icy ruins were the remains of their belongings, improvised notes, and above all, marks indicating they had discovered something of historical value. This revelation brought momentary relief. The couple had not disappeared through carelessness or recklessness, but rather because they were on the path to a discovery that surpassed anything imaginable. Justice was beginning to be served, not by bringing them back, but by giving voice to their interrupted search. As investigators consolidated the evidence, they realized that the official narrative of accident or natural disaster no longer held up to the weight of the evidence. Recovered documents and artifacts showed that the missing people had found records of ancient peoples who inhabited the Dinaric Alps, and that this discovery had been the centerpiece of the entire tragedy. With each recovered item, it became clearer that the couple had been protagonists of a journey that had not ended in vain. They had opened the doors to a truth that the region had hidden for centuries. However, the confirmation of their deaths, evidenced by remains and signs of a desperate struggle against the unforgiving environment, brought irreversible pain to their families. Justice, at that moment, was a double-edged sword. It revealed the truth, but at a devastating emotional cost. Still, the greatest burden fell on those who remained. For their parents, siblings, and the community, the discovery brought an end to an agonizing wait, but also the scar of knowing that their loved ones had become part of the very enigma they were trying to solve. The final expedition brought not only proof, but also the certainty that the search for the truth, though painful, had been worth it. The couple, in their courage, became a symbol of sacrifice and determination. And even if justice came in the form of a belated revelation, the truth was now there, recorded forever in the pages of the mountain. The end of the journey brought not only answers, but also a wave of mixed emotions. For the family, discovering the truth was like breathing after years of suffocation. There was finally an end. But this relief was accompanied by irreparable pain, as the couple would never return. The silence of the Dinaric Alps, which once symbolized mystery, now also carried the weight of longing. The place was transformed into an invisible memorial, marked not only by tragedy, but by the courage of two explorers who dared to go further. The protagonist, be it a brother, a wife, or a close friend, was tasked with reflecting on everything they had experienced. The disappearance was not just an accident lost in time, but a reminder that the search for the unknown always exacts a price. Those who embark on adventures of this magnitude know they may not return, but the legacy they leave remains. And it is in this legacy that true victory lies. The courage to challenge the impossible and the determination to seek answers, even when the risk is greater than life itself. The Dinaric Alps still stand, grand, mysterious, guarding their secrets as they always have. But now, for all who know their story, they represent something greater. The boundary between life and the unknown, between what is revealed and what remains hidden. The missing couple has not been forgotten. They have become a symbol of sacrifice, reminding everyone that the desire to explore, however painful, is an essential part of the human soul.